on a typically cold and rather blustery Brussels November evening. It's a great pleasure to welcome you back here. I see a number of familiar faces, which is wonderful, to the IES 2012 Autumn Lecture Series entitled EU Energy Policy on the Road to the Big D word, on the road to decarbonisation. For those of you who have been steadfast devotees of the lecture series, you'll know that we have moved steadily through the difficult issues and policies of climate policy and decarbonising aspects of the power sector and transport and industry, and looking at aspects of energy efficiency and gas pipelines and electricity grids up till 2050, in fact, which is what we did last week. And now, in a sense, the politics begins this week and next. And this evening, the title of of this evening's presentations collectively is the Evolving External Energy Interdependencies. External energy interdependencies. So you have to kind of keep your prefixes, in order. Part one, past energy partners. So there's already a bit of a chronology there. I'm really delighted with the high caliber presentations that we're going to be having this evening, and I'm going to introduce them in reverse order than they appear in the program. Just because I feel like it. I'm very delighted, first of all, to welcome Ralph Vogel, who's the Senior Research Analyst at OPEC. He's been with OPEC for a year or so now, previously from Saudi Aramco, and Ralph is currently in the research division at OPEC, which is, of course, responsible for the continuous program of research designed to meet the requirements of OPEC itself, with, of course, particular emphasis on energy and related matters. After Ralph's presentation, which will be 15 minutes, we're going to have Mieciej Bukowski. I know I've mispronounced that, but I'll probably get a second chance later on. And the titles here are numerous and varied, so I could really select anything I like. President of the Institute for Structural Research, with a PhD in economics, assistant professor at the Warsaw School of Economics, and president of the Institute for Structural Research, certainly heading up departments for economic analysis. So we're delighted to have you here, Mieciej. And then after that, André Bellier, former colleague of mine, present colleague, I should say, associate professor at the Center for EU-Russia Studies, series since August, I think, 2012, and responsible, among other things, for the Jean Monnet teaching, something that he and I have in common. Also a visiting honorary lecturer at the Center for Energy, Petroleum, Mineral Law and Policy at the University of Dundee, an equally blustery place, just like Brussels, and has previously worked at the Higher School of Economics in Moscow, and of course focuses on the EU's external energy policy and topic of particular interest to myself, EU-Russia energy relations. I have a bit of a reputation for trying to keep the speakers to time, which I will exercise with rigor this evening. So I'm going to ask each of them to adhere firmly to the 15-minute rule, because I know we're going to have a great deal of questions and hopefully answers taking us from 7 o'clock onwards. So with no further ado, I will ask Ralph to come up.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity of presenting the view of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, and the future EU energy policy. I will talk first about the role of oil, then the role of OPEC, and the current relation between OPEC and the EU, and then finally about opportunities for future OPEC-EU relations. Oil has been fueling the world economies for more than 100 years, and it will remain the leading fuel to satisfy global energy demand. Oil is convenient as an energy carrier for the transportation sector, especially there are no viable alternatives right now. We are well aware that oil is not infinite but continuous. Technology advances assure that there will be no supply shortage in the foreseeable future. We acknowledge that oil is a valuable resource which shall be used in a responsible manner. The role of OPEC. OPEC emphasizes on the role of oil to support sustainable development and to reduce poverty. OPEC is actively participating in the UN climate change negotiations, and OPEC will support development of environmentally friendly technologies which address climate change concerns and favor the efficient use of clean fossil fuels, and also technologies like carbon capture and storage. The current relation between OPEC and EU we can describe as very fruitful and intensive, and OPEC intends to continue and expand the already existing dialogue with the EU. We are currently engaged in ministerial energy dialogues which happens and take place every year, and a couple of EU-OPEC roundtables have been conducted on subjects like CCS, energy policies, and oil market developments. This week there is an international roundtable on offshore safety here in Brussels, and my colleagues will be traveling in a few days and joining the team for discussing that. There are EU-OPEC studies and roundtable assessing potential human resource demand bottlenecks in the petroleum industry. This is currently scheduled and under work. And another OPEC-EU study on energy efficiency and its potential impact on demand will be scheduled very soon. The opportunities for future OPEC-EU relations are numerous, and they are not on a specific topic, but specific roundtables and studies and workshops can be scheduled, and we are looking forward for further events together with the EU. Exchange of views on future energy demand and supply scenarios are important opportunities which we are looking forward as well, and emphasis on technologies, especially clean fossil fuels, CCS, and the use of carbon dioxide for enhanced oil recovery. Let me conclude with a few comments. OPEC intends to continue its dialogue with the EU on a range of subjects, and OPEC is ready to collaborate with the EU in achieving a balanced market to avoid the two extremes of either too low or too high oil prices. OPEC supports technologies which address climate and environmental concerns for the benefit of its member countries and also for the benefit of the EU. Thank you so much, and I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you very much, Rob. If it's okay with you, we will take questions after we've had all the speakers, so we can give people a time to consider. Please.
So, as you see, there's 4 points in my presentation. I'm going to talk about energy security from the Central and Eastern European perspective. I was counting a little bit that I'm going to have my presentation after my Russian colleagues, but somehow I didn't manage to. So this is for the first time since 1650 or so that police and attacking side. So I'm trying to be a gentleman. So energy security can be exercised for different types of action. First is through resource control. So basically, it is the type of energy security the United States or Russia are doing, or China. Mainly. Europe doesn't have that comfort, generally speaking. Then through competitive market, which is the way the Europe is trying to act, at least a little bit, a lot of efforts regarding this. Then through technology, once you will find the technologies that are resource independent, then you will improve your energy security. And then through diversity, you can try to mix all those three previous parts and find there's a certain balance of it. So I will briefly refer to those three, referring to the region. Central and Eastern Europe, as you probably know, has a little bit different genesis than the Western Europe. So in the last 50 years or so, it was dominated. It was in the communist bloc, dominated by Soviet Union, and therefore it was secured, for instance, from the oil shock of the middle 1970s. However, of course, it generated a lot of inefficiencies, and didn't prepare the region to the competition on the market, actually, and provoked a lot of solutions that actually are not really fit into the landscape as it is today. So the composition, for instance, on the gas and oil dependence is pretty large from Russia. So, for instance, 70% in Poland, 70% of domestic consumption of natural gas is from Russia. The rest is from domestic resource. In the rest of the states, regarding oil, also is, of course, the dependence is very large. Apart from Romania, that is an exception. However, this can be changed, and in many ways it can be changed. One of the jokers is the shale gas. The shale gas is something that is already a game changer on the worldwide basis due to discoveries and the new technology discoveries in the United States. And quite large resources are located in Central and Eastern Europe, together with England. Basically in Poland and Bulgaria and Ukraine also, a little bit. They are under assessment at the moment, so it is not yet 100% sure how large they are, but as far as I talk to geologists, they are there. Yes, so it is, even if it's not yet revealed. So this can be one of the game changers in the perspective of 10 up to 20 years. And not only for the country that controls this resource, as Poland, for instance, but also for the rest of the region, because those countries are really in proximity one to each other. The next solution regarding the control of resources, a little bit weaker, is the infrastructure. The infrastructure it was really lacking due to these historical reasons, and part of it are LNG terminals. There's actually no LNG terminal in the region, and one is being built at the moment in Western Poland, northern Western Poland, with quite large capacity, 5 to 7 billion cubic meters per year. So it is about half of the consumption in Poland, so a lot actually, and together with another infrastructure like pipelines and interconnectors to Czech Republic, to Slovakia, it can change the picture, because the picture is that basically the market is not very competitive due to infrastructural reasons. It's very hard to transport gas. With oil, it is harder. Of course, also investments are taking place in order to diversify the sources. Once the sources are diversified, the price can be lower. And the basic, from an economist point of view, the basic problem is the very high price of the natural gas, basically, in the region. One of the highest in Europe, if not the highest. Then there's, it touches the second question, is the competition on the market. And this is the more general problem, I believe, not only a Central European problem, but also European problem. So basically, in every gas market, in every country in Europe, it operates one or two companies on the single market that dominate the market. And the same is in Europe, like for instance, Czech Republic, they have the CZ and or again IG in Poland. They dominate the market. Of course, they are also dominated somehow by the supplier Gazprom at the moment. But nevertheless, even if this problem is removed from the competition point of view, then the seller remains, and the third-party access is very important to increase the security of the industry and the security of households. That simply means to have certain access to the certain resource for a cheap price. So that's how can I define it. However, this problem is much wider. I would say that it is the European problem. not only the problem of Central and Eastern Europe. It basically it cannot be solved on the single country basis. A large cooperation is needed, and I believe the Commissioner Oettinger is actually playing an important role with respect to this direction. However, there are a lot of problems to be overcome yet, and so there's a long way ahead of us. Does it change? Okay. And then, of course, the major topic on the seminar, not only on this seminar, but on the line of the seminar that have already taken place, is the decarbonisation. And then, of course, I'm treating this as a pretext when I'm going to refer to technology or technological options. Basically, it is much more secure to import technology than to import the resource. If you are importing the resource, like whatever, coal or oil or any other fossil fuel, even uranium, whatever, yeah, then you are dependent on your supplier. When the supply is cut off, regardless of the reasons, then you are dead. Simply, you cannot supply energy anymore. However, if you import technology that is independent from the resource, for instance, windmills, solar, photovoltaics, and so on, then you, of course, you pay for it. Yes, and the inventor of the technology earns money. However, you are from the same moment you are independent. Yes, you control the technology. So actually, rising level of a share of renewables in the energy mix is increasing the independence of the country, or security of the country, especially if you interconnect it, or if you think about it as a dispersed model. In the dispersed model, which is not very concentrated, it's not so easy to destroy the net, or to destroy the supply of the power to the country on the countrywide level, as it is with concentrated sources. So it's also a security issue, and therefore, which is, I'm afraid, not foreseen like that, or not let's say, politicians don't think about it in that way. However, they should. So it's not a very popular way to think about the decarbonization policy. However, this is not the. Am I controlling it? Not. This is not the entire story, and the problem is that there are also challenges with respect to all those themes, those subjects. And the first challenge, the major question that is very important for the region, but also for Europe as a whole, is how to keep the energy price cheap. Actually, for instance, gas is very expensive in the Eastern Europe at the moment. It should be much cheaper in order to keep the industry competitive. In the broader picture, gas is quite expensive in Europe compared to the United States. So it is very important to change this picture, because at the moment, in international global level, United States are winning. Yes, and over long term, they can really win the industry. European industry, chemical industry, can save them money if they move to the United States. Yes, so this is quite important, especially for the Eastern Europe, which is much more industrialized than the West, than France, than Spain, than England, much more. It's comparable to Germany, even more, in Czech Republic. So it is very important question. I believe that the mixture of the infrastructure activities in infrastructure, on the shale gas exploitation, and not delaying it for Kalendas Graecas, and market changes and so on. So these are very important places to act, and they shouldn't be neglected. The second important question is how to agree interest of different member states. Let's understand the interest of Denmark, that has already decarbonized, is a lot of wind and proximity of Sweden and Norway with a lot of water, and technologies in Danish companies are very different from interests of Czech Republic or Romania or Poland. It is very hard to agree it. However, if we think about technologies, what I've said before, it's much better for Germans to finance windmills in Romania, they will buy these windmills in Siemens and become much more energy secured in that way, and Siemens will earn those money from German taxpayer, and the overall energy security in Europe, especially with investments in grid, will increase. So I would encourage this kind of thinking also in the West, on the much more broader way of thinking that it is used to do. And then there's a problem of European Commission, I would say. Can European Commission actually be a potent actor in this field? I'm really a supporter for Commissioner Oettinger in this as an actor, but I have a feeling that actually this process is going very, very slowly. And I understand it a little bit because I've seen even once I've seen a German newspaper with a huge title on it that actually our energy security is endangered because we are going to import power from Austria. Okay. If Germans are thinking that the energy security is endangered because of the importing electricity from Austria, what can we say about the nations that are much more divided historically? So basically this is what I wanted to say, I believe. Last slide with thank you, but I'll make it. So I'm waiting for your questions and hope that my quarrel with Andrzej will not be very, very strong. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Actually, I just came out from a very interesting Polinaris discussion. Polinaris is one of the largest, if not the largest, European framework program on the access to minerals and energy. And those who are really interested to look at the issue in depth, I would really advise to look at these outputs of these projects. And they're going to be ongoing, and more outputs, take this one, will be there. One of the key issues of the Polinaris project, which I'm also supporting, is that we should clearly distinguish between technical issue of availability of resources, dependencies, supplies on one hand, and political issues like security, institutions from another hand. It would actually mean that there is no linear link between security and dependency. There is no linear link between a concern of the end of resources and the actual availability of resources. I do not say that there is no link at all. The link is not linear, and I will try to explain it. So how do I do it? I have to... Right. Yeah. So, as we were talking about the European energy policies, we can note a very interesting trend. What was the energy policy of the European Union in 1995? And I will tell you, and you may have noticed, there were almost no energy policy, apart of the very specific areas. Now we live in a basically re-switch of the positions. If before 1990s included, the energy policy was mostly incentivized by the states, now we have basically the European Union in face of the European Commission and other European powers could take more and more initiative in the field. And our previous speaker mentioned about it, so I'm not going to elaborate too much. What do we see in the European Union's policy? First, we see internal market and liberalization. Whatever you think, but it's the EU strategy to which the member states need to adapt. Another is environmental targets within 2020 objectives. For instance, increasing the renewable energy share in the consumption. Quite importantly, the two objectives are extremely linked, although they look like separate. To have 20% of renewable energy in the total primary supply, you need to have a large availability of natural gas. More you have renewables, more gas you need. Why? Because renewables, they change, they have a high weather variability, so you need to have another additional resource which helps to supply electricity in case. So, until internal market, as the previous speaker said, is needed to create a competition to have a competitive price. It's obvious that the European states are now divided on the issue of external energy policy. Big states usually don't like the idea of the Europeanization. Smaller states usually like it. So though there is an increasing also emphasis on energy security, and it's a tremendously mistaken or misleading conception of energy security, saying we are dependent and therefore there is an energy security. And the previous speaker mentioned a very good thing about, very, very interesting quote of the German, I don't remember exactly who, the German quote saying that we are dependent on Austria. Yeah, you're dependent on Austria, but it doesn't mean that there is a security issue there. You know, Cuba is dependent 100% on Venezuela, on oil. But they do not speak about energy security and a problem to depend on Venezuela, and so on. So the issue is not linear. Then we see that actually there is also shaping of the, if I can say, values of external energy policy. And they are seen in several documents, for instance, European Parliament latest communication 2012. The most recent, can you imagine, like in July, they adopted it. What they do say? They say that they need to improve relations with energy exporting states. That's indeed something what you work on in order to improve energy security. Second of all, they say that they need to increase or reinforce the global leadership for global energy governance, including the Energy Charter Treaty and Energy Community Treaty. However, can you turn it? Yeah, however, we see that the Europeanization of energy policy is paradoxically combined with a weakening or reducing the EU's global influence. And that's actually a major challenge for the European Union's policy in general. So the influence is decreasing. For instance, the Energy Charter Treaty was not accepted by almost all the energy producing countries, including very liberal ones like Australia and Norway. Energy Community Treaty, which is like expansion instrument, is hardly to be implemented in Moldova and Ukraine, which are basically the European periphery somehow. There is also issue in relations with the energy producing states, for instance, resource nationalism, state capitalism. Also, we see that even the closest ally to the European Union would be the United States. But even there on the energy issues, there are a lot of clashes. The United States will never take the EU approach on the climate regime. Moreover, both actors are in a deep contradiction regarding many issues, including actually the Energy Charter. Turn, please. So, in this context, I would like to introduce relations with Russia. So, Russia is the key partner in all this picture. And this key partner, moreover, we should not detach energy from the rest. There is a deep economic interdependency between the two. Russia is the largest euro holder in the world. And Russia is dependent economically on the European Union, as much as European Union is increasingly linked to the Russian partly reserves, which go partly to the European financial systems. There is a large cooperation, although we always say about problems between Russia and the European Union. There is a cooperation on energy efficiency. There is a cooperation on nuclear safety. There is a cooperation on exchange of information, which started in 2000 by Energy Dialogue. That actually, in 2000, that was a unique, in practically presidential institution where two diverging actors decided to inform each other about their objectives, what they do, etc., etc. Also, exchange of predictions, etc. You know that the EU member states between themselves do not always inform each other about the respective energy policies. And we already had it between Russia and the European Union. But then we have Russian supplies of oil products, nuclear fuels, uranium, coal, which go to the European Union, and there is no issue of security. You know, United Kingdom imports up to 40% of coal from Russia. Nobody in the United Kingdom will talk about security of coal supplies from Russia. Different thing is about natural gas. So please turn. Natural gas is an object of security. The previous speaker was also mentioning it because of the infrastructures, but not only because. Because if you remember 1960s Cold War, Western Germany with Italy wanted to depend on the Soviet natural gas, although it was totally different. Why did they want to depend? Because they wanted to decrease the influence of OPEC. Yeah? So there is again an institutional factor, not only infrastructural factor. However, quite paradoxically, in 1960s we were friends in energy, although we were not liking each other ideologically. In 1990s and 2000s, things turn around. There is no Cold War anymore, but energy and I underline gas security became the security issue. Here we can see, I'm not going to explain it in detail, but those who want to have details, you can have them after, or you can have the slide. You see that the gradual evolution of both European policies, Russian policies, and also international negotiations such as Energy Charter Treaty, they all evolved through time. You see the securitization of energy policies in Russia since the 1990s. So especially from 1998, Russia takes energy as one of the political instruments. 2006, Russia turns step closer towards resource nationalism and the discourse of an energy superpower. You look at the European Union, things are happening more or less towards the politicization, including the formation of internal market and including the 2020 targets. We, at the same time, have negotiations on the Energy Charter Treaty. At the beginning, it was signed in 1994. Then some additional protocols and documents were proposed. There are more expert people here in this room who will enlighten you better than myself. However, since the securitization became important, since energy, or especially gas, became an object of political controversies, then from this moment, the Energy Charter process started to slow down. Please turn. Why? Why basically we didn't achieve the Energy Charter? Or basically why there are problems. The Energy Charter is there, and this is the only multilateral treaty which exists. But it's because the very final objective of Russia and of the European Union is very different regarding the energy governance. For the European Union, I will start with the European Union, there is a need to have supplies, access to upstream, and create competition downstream, as the previous speaker very well explained. For Russia, it's the other way around. You keep control upstream, like in any other energy-producing country will be. And you need to be secure of your downstream markets, because some of the energy projects, in order to be implemented, need from 15 to 20 years of implementation. And when the Russians see that the contractual obligations became shorter in the European Union, so they become worried about what's going to be with our long-term investments. Please turn the slide. What is the Russian position regarding the Energy Charter? Russia never withdrew, although it's very, again, misleading. Many mass media and some even policymakers say that Russia withdrew from the Energy Charter and doesn't want to hear about it anymore. Not really. Russia remained the signatory of the Energy Charter, who just decided not to implement it provisionally. It's basically the same status would be in Norway, Australia, basically, again, big energy exporting states. And the question here is basically the following. Why the European Union could not attract, with their position, more or less liberal position, energy producing countries. And basically that's a major dilemma of the European Union's role on the global governance, that they cannot even attract the United States or influence Moldova and Ukraine to implement several reforms, whereas they are, or they have to deal with much more different and sometimes much more difficult countries. Please turn. Quite an interesting thing. Russia getting into its own assertiveness, political assertiveness related to the resource nationalism. And in this case, Russia proposes its own conception on the international energy governance. For instance, the draft convention on energy security. When you look at the convention, you have several points which are quite innovative. For example, the early warning mechanism, which created kind of like a diplomatic exchange about the things which are happening. And that's again reinforcing the spirit of the energy dialogue. And in other areas, Russia either lowered down the level which was proposed by the Energy Charter, or simply dropped it, please. So what are the prospects of the EU-Russia relations in the Energy Charter? Is that one prospect would be that Russia really withdraws from the treaty and proposes this convention, but nobody would sign it up. But, however, as another alternative would be that the proposal is discussed within the treaty, and that actually the European side is also becoming more flexible on the issue of the energy governance. Please turn the slide. It's going to be my last one. Oh, no, it's not. Turn again. I'm not going to enter into details of the natural gas markets. You know, just the main point. Natural gas markets became quite politicized, and you will see major political agreements, including the international governance like the Energy Charter, on the natural gas issue. And one of the key elements that Russia has is the export monopoly on natural gas. Russia has export monopoly, and it may introduce several flexibilities in export monopolies to help, basically, the development of European internal market. Yeah. So what do we have? We have the following conclusions. Effective energy security stems from an effective governance. Once you don't have it, the issue of security emerges. Energy community treaty type relationship with Russia would not work because of the clash of values and non-appropriateness of norms of each other. But again, there are possibilities of political negotiations, and all of them will be political, to readapt Russian gas strategy to the evolving European gas markets. But again, nothing will happen as the European Union wishes, but there are going to be some adaptations. That's one of the key elements of international relations and of diplomatic relations in energy, which would also boost energy security. Okay, thank you very much for your attention, and like others, I will be open for the questions. Thank you.
Well, it's heartening for the gentleman to have taken seriously my loaded threats about keeping you time so much, so in fact that we're ahead of time, which is marvelous. Good, we have lots of time for questions and answers. I think what we'll do is we'll do a couple of groups of questions, if that's all right. So if you have questions, do please raise your hand, introduce yourself, so we know to whom we're speaking. And rather than an extended commentary, if you can, just get actively to the point with regards to the questions you have for the speakers. Please fire away. This is the awkward part where, yes, Claire. Thank you.
I'm Claire Dupont from the Institute for European Studies. I have a question to the entire panel, actually, and maybe later I'll ask a few extra questions if I can't come up to several times. But from all of the presentations, it was really Maciej's presentation that seemed to use the D word most, so decarbonisation. And I'm just interested to know, does decarbonisation come into dialogue between EU, OPEC, EU, Russia, and is this taken seriously? And if not, why not, especially with Maciej's assessment that this would, in fact, decarbonisation would, especially for the EU, enhance security if we moved to technology-based imports as opposed to fossil.
Yes. You want to collect questions?
We'll take a group.
Yeah,
Rather,
my
Steve?
question links to a
let me extend to the question of Claire related to the role of gas. The last speaker, and I believe he already focused on the role of natural gas in the decarbonisation efforts, and the more renewables we need, the more gas we will need. But recently, chief economist of the International Energy Agency was reported to say that if we have a golden age of gas, this could actually hinder international efforts in mitigating climate change, because many of the governments that are currently dealing with the economic crisis and austerity measures are switching to cheaper fossil fuels and gas, and this could push off renewables from the agenda. So I would like to hear your comment on this issue.
Okay. I'd like to take a third, if I may. The gentleman at the back.
Christian Jeepers, Nina Chambers. I was wondering from Mr. Vogel if you could explain a little bit more about whether the OPEC stimulates the development of renewable energy in its member state countries to ensure some sense of energy security within those particular countries in the long term.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's start with those three. So Claire's question on decarbonisation, I think, was addressed to the whole panel, so if you'd each like to take a shot at that. Then Radostina's question with regards to the golden age of gas, I think to Andre, and then Christian's question to Ralph. Andre, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Claire, for your question. Indeed, it's an important, actually, dimension of energy efficiency, promoting of renewable energies. But note, a part of the European Union, nobody in the world takes the issue so fanatically. And therefore, of course, you will not have a decarbonisation debate within the EU-US Energy Council. You will not have it in such European Union focused view in the EU-Russia energy dialogue. Supposedly, maybe more or less same what happened with OPEC. Maybe have another opinion. But it doesn't mean that the energy efficiency and renewables are not taken seriously, right? And you have loads of cooperation on the energy efficiency and renewables. You know, there is one project on which is called Rustec. You know what is Desertec? Yeah, it's a project of importing solar energy from Africa to Europe. Basically, Rustec aims at exporting Russian wind energy, potential resource in the Murmansk area, to the Nordic European countries, and like this relate one market to another. So these things are extremely serious. But at the political level, there are some, I would say, needs to understand what do we want from the future climate regime. And there, some clashes, some political clashes exist. And for natural gas price, it's actually a big dilemma that when natural gas goes down, it's very bad for the renewables, but when it goes up, it's also very bad for the renewables. Because if it goes very much up, then the undertakings are stimulated to switch to the coal. And then the renewables will be just not used. Yeah, nobody will use the renewables. So the issue is to have long-term previsibility of the gas price, right? And that's actually something which is wanted by both European undertakings and Russia. The only discussion here is that Russia would like to have it to export gas indexed to oil, and therefore the gas price will always be following the oil price hikes. For the European undertakings, there must be several hubs, gas in gas-to-gas competition, which drives the price. And most of the basically disputes or negotiations now between Russia and Europe, between Gazprom and European companies, is about the price. There is no discussion of the long term. Although some people of the European Commission say that we need to move to the short term. Short-term markets for natural gas will kill renewables, because you will have either very low or very high, and then both of them are bad for the renewables. Thank you.
Well,
Yes, I had a discussion about 2 weeks ago with somebody from the EU about the decarbonization targets, and they talk, of course, by 2050 reaching this 80 to 95% decarbonization. But until 2050, it's still a long way to go. There are yet not clear programs how to achieve that. So far, the EU is committed to reach the decarbonization target of 80 to 95%, but at the same time, they also admit that it will be costly. They are very much aware that the EU cannot act alone. It's not the world. And they are also aware that there is a high risk. In that time frame from now to 2030, when these investments will happen for the decarbonization, there is the risk that the cost of energy in Europe will be becoming very high. And at the same period, the emerging economies might become attractive, increasingly attractive. And there is also the risk allocated with that entire industries which rely on energy might consider migrating into the emerging economies. So we still have to watch and see what actually happens here on a global stage, how this decarbonization will be integrated, and are these targets of 80 to 95% feasible. Technologically they are feasible, that is quite obvious. But the question is, what are the costs here and the possible sacrifices?
Did you want to take a shot at answering
Yes,
Christian's question?
yes, this question is quite interesting. Of course, OPEC member countries are traditionally at the same time not only exporting oil, they are also consuming it for their domestic purpose. And they are aware that at least some of their member countries have a growing population, a growing need for energy, and that the domestic consumption cannot go forever and to an unlimited level. So I can tell you that without naming specific countries, there are numerous OPEC member countries who are considering and actively now studying to implement renewable energies for their domestic energy needs, respectively solar energy in the sun-rich countries, wind energy in some coastal areas, and but also nuclear energy is also considered by a couple of OPEC member countries to supply the domestic market with electricity. Water, hydro energy is considered by some countries as a source as well. There are a couple of studies ongoing to look into the possibility of getting involved into third generation biofuels which do not compete with agricultural land. So this is definitely taken very seriously. And OPEC, of course, stands for guaranteeing the oil supply to the world, to the consumer countries, and will not allow a situation where this will not be any longer guaranteed.
Briefly, maybe supplementing what I already said, I think that Europe has a major problem. Europe, on the global level, on the energy sector, of course, is the price of energy. The energy is too costly in Europe for the industry, basically. At the moment, as the prices are in Germany, or not only in Germany, apart from France, everywhere. It's too expensive for the industry. If there were no home buyers, as it is, for sure German industry should move to the States at the moment, because there's a cheap energy and hundreds of millions can be saved from the level of such companies like BAS. Yeah, so, therefore this must be tackled somehow, and of course renewables are a little bit against this, because at the moment renewables are quite expensive. However, it is not exactly the case in 10 years time from now, or 15 years time from now, because when we look on the learning curves of the renewables, we see that those costs are falling very rapidly, especially in photovoltaic, even in wind. So in 15 years, it will be, the situation will look a lot different than today. And therefore, the long term, this is an important window of opportunity. It must be used in Europe, and I believe that it's just the same kind of reasoning that is taking place in the United States. Because the United States, this is a continent, large continent with a lot of resources, so they have developed the technology to extract the shale oil and shale gas, and are changing the markets. But this is, of course, this is very good for American economy, but it's also very good for the security. They will save money not only not to buying oil from OPEC in 20 years or so, but they will also save money not to spend it on aircraft carriers traveling there enormous, yes, and so on. So this is really a question of security and the international policy of the United States. And this will change the field, and Europe must somehow find itself in this landscape. And this new political landscape, and this is the same, I believe, for Russia, because it's a lot of changing for Russia. Russia is really, and those relations, Russia, Europe, are really dependent on this nexus, yes, that you have described, that Russia needs to earn money. 20% of GDP is, or something like that, 25, is earned from resources, from oil and gas. So a lot.
But much less for the gas. So oil is much more profitable.
Yeah, it's profitable, yes. And then there's the question, what is going to happen if the United States are entering the stage? Yes, and simply removing a lot of demand from the state.
It could be also that
Yes,
it's
so
going to
that's the Russia will change. Also, imagine that will happen. Yes, the resources are not going to be so expensive as they are today. Imagine, maybe that's not true. Yes, because of course there's a lot of factors at the same time. For instance, development of Africa, for instance. Yeah. But imagine that the price will be low. That's a problem for Russia to finance the model as it is at the moment, economic model, but also political model. So that's that. And this will be, I will claim that it can be beneficial for Europe, this change of the model in Russia. So.
Thank you very much. Let's take another round. I saw a hand back there. Do please introduce yourself.
I have a small question to you. I'm sorry.
Can you say your name first?
Mark Van. I'm curious whether Russia's entry into the World Trade Organization, if you believe it will influence the Russian energy positions at all, considering the implications of the WTO entry applies to the Russian energy market as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Others? I think I saw a hand behind. Reluctant hand? No? Sir.
Yes, my name is Robert, student at Institute of European Studies at the University of Leuven. I do agree that the prices, of course, the energy price in Europe is high compared to other regions of the globe, and that this can become a potential problem for industry in Europe. On the other hand, we all know that price is also an incentive for companies to invent. And so I do see not only that risk, but also see a chance that Europe actually can, because of a higher level of price in the energy market, be a leader in innovation, in energy saving and energy reduction. So I would want to have the perspective of the panel on that. I mean, to what extent is Europe allowed to, let's say, have a higher price and thus fostering innovation without really putting in danger our industry? So that way, as some terrorists might this channel.
Thank you very much, Robert. I'd like to take a third, if I may.
There's
Another question?
Yes. One question to Mr. Belli. Yes, I was wondering if you could answer whether the organization for gas exporting countries and the way that, well, I was wondering what you believe Russia wants with this particular organization, and whether you believe it's conducive to the experience of energy security by EU member states.
Okay.
Right. Thank you very much. So we've got Mark's question on the impact of the WTO, Robert's question on price incentive versus inventive, perhaps, and Christian just now on the role of gas OPEC. Andrea, I'll let you lead up.
Thank you very much. Yes, WTO. Basically, the impact is rather low, right? So there is no such an impact of the WTO on the, for example, on the gas export monopoly. The WTO not going to influence it. That will be done partly by the Russian side within the bargaining situation, because in Russia we now understand that the European ones, and decreasing the price or renegotiating the price is what actually going to happen, right? And regarding the WTO, yeah, you will have the dual pricing issue. Dual price issue, which will be somewhere in the air, right? But again, will any stakeholder country go to WTO arbitration for the dual pricing? Yeah, very improbable. Could be, but it's very improbable because in this case, like a country would enter into a very difficult area where they're not sure to win, and which will take like ages, right? So it would be rather disputes related to concrete sectors like fertilizers, chemicals, and so on, and there is going to be step or point-by-point agreements. But I would say that the WTO as such will not create a change. It's rather a change will be through bilateral or multilateral negotiations. So again, it's not about belonging to organization, but how your institutions work. I would like to answer your question as well, or like to enter into the discussion. Indeed, if you look at the energy sectors, it's like a cyclic process. Every price hike improves the technological situation and creates a situation to drive the prices down. Once the prices are down, then there is an incentive to consume hydrocarbons, and so the prices are again pushed up. So basically, you don't have the structural situation where you have only low price or only high price. And high prices can be also very profitable. But here, I think the most of the European undertakings concern consists in having a clarity on the price. And most of them consider that the indexation of gas price to the oil price within the Russian contracts is outdated, because most of the electricity is generated by natural gas or other sources, but oil products are not there anymore. That's the main concern, is that the main discussion. Element also, if you look about the if you think about the high energy price, you know that they are now partly saving the European Union's financial situation, because European products can go to Russia or OPEC countries, and also the revenues from OPEC and from Russia go to Europe. So the presence of the large revenues from oil in the producing countries benefits the consuming countries, and the consuming countries are very aware of it. And then a small element on the shale gas. The United States did not develop any shale gas. That was developed by markets, right? So the markets felt an opportunity, oh, that's profitable because of the high oil price. And what happened is that the US markets, gas markets, decoupled from the oil. So they are not dependent on the oil at all. But it doesn't mean that the stakeholders will always be willing to sell the natural gas cheaply. Of course, they will make the consumers first dependent on the shale gas, and then the price is going to go high. Moreover, there are gas, LNG, liquefied natural gas, now in the United States, who doesn't know where to go, where to be sold. So they go to Europe. Once they go to Europe, what's going to happen? Less stakeholders going to be on the US market, and the remaining stakeholders will most probably increase the price. In that time, we would suppose that the European Union or European hubs will receive all the LNGs, the price will go down, but once the US price goes up, the LNG will divert thereby. And then you have, so everything is cyclic, and we don't have to be alarmist on the very high or very low price, but it's a question of very important political background and very careful business operation. And then there was a third question regarding Gazopec. Gazopec, it's at the beginning in 2002 it was created like producer to producer cooperation, mostly on the mutual information of exchange and technological exchange. But once it was created, in many consuming countries at the political levels, quite serious people started saying gas OPEC gonna squeeze our security. After that, Russia's several political leaders at various levels started saying the same. Yes, we're going to use OPEC if you don't behave accordingly. But in reality, gas OPEC cannot influence the price, because in most cases, 60% of world gas supplies are indexed to oil. And even if they are not indexed to oil and they will be hub-based price, they will not be easily manipulatable for very clear economic reason. Gas export is much less elastic than the oil export. You can manipulate with the oil productions level, but not with the gas production level. And the final element, according to your question, do you really think that OPEC controls the price? I don't think so. So OPEC sometimes tried to decrease the price by increasing quotas, and it didn't work. The price was basically made by traders. And also you have other situations where, on the contrary, big OPEC states try to reduce the oil production. Then you have smaller OPEC states who cheat and who sell the gas. And if you look at the OPEC structure, I may be a little bit provocative, but OPEC doesn't control more than 50% of world oil production. It means that they do not have a monopoly from economic point of view. And if they do not have a monopoly, it means that it's not really a cartel. Moreover, within the OPEC, there is no infringement procedures on the countries who do not follow the quotas. So my point is, even OPEC cannot create a strong cartel which influences the price, and which is like very dangerous for the Europeans. For the natural gas cartel, is going to be much worse. So it's basically the issue again of politicization and basically over-exaggerations of the threat.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And I also have to emphasize on that OPEC is not any longer that what many people have in mind, a cartel that fixes prices or screws up the prices. It's in fact the opposite. OPEC is interested to keep the price stable and foreseeable, because we know very well it's a mutual benefit for both parties. If OPEC member countries cannot foresee the price, then their own planning is getting out of control. And of course, OPEC is not at all interested to get the oil price very high, but not also very low, at a reasonable level. In this context, we have to say, well, after the discovery of oil and the technology to refine that, oil somehow has become the reference standard of energy, as, let's say, gold was it for currencies for centuries. Now it is oil for energy, and that means when oil goes up, then it's quite attractive that other energy sources being explored or technologies developed to use oil more efficiently. And we have seen this in the past. We are talking about a commodity which is used for producing transport fuels, petrochemicals, power, and so on. And the other commodities, including renewables, nuclear, they are somehow related. If we go to the extreme that oil will reach $1,000 a barrel, of course, then the markets will look for other sources, and that will bring the price of oil down. So it's all interconnected. And the role of OPEC here is a responsible role to make sure that things don't get screwed up. And we have seen that also in the last year and this year, in particular when geopolitical tensions in the Middle East have been more and more appearing. OPEC always released statements that the supply is not endangered, that nobody has to be worried, which helped a lot, in fact, to stabilize the price. OPEC is definitely not the cartel which controls oil, and as the efforts here in the EU are now also clear that decarbonisation is coming additionally. So we are seeing a diversification in the use of different sources of energy, which doesn't mean oil will be obsolete. Things, in our view, are going in an evolutionary way. There was a comment of the golden gas age. Yes, gas is apparently becoming more important. There are a lot of efforts now in the transport sector, LNG for ships, LNG for trucks in the US, which could make gas quite attractive, but with that the demand will increase. And then also those markets where let's say the gas price is very low, if they offer gas now everywhere for trucks, for ships, for railways, then all of a sudden the demand will go up and the price automatically. So at the end, the market somehow will govern how we end up with the prices.
Regarding technology, maybe it was an interesting question. Of course, the price drives the innovation a little bit, yes, as was already mentioned, so especially in the mining sector, the refining sector, and so on, yes. So it's, let's say, industrial innovation inside the industry, but also the state also plays the role in the field. After the oil shock in 1970s, a lot of resources has been spent in the United States and in Europe, both on the innovation in energy from the state money. And the second wave is right now, more or less during the Obama administration. So, and of course it is being spent on something else, renewables, photovoltaics mainly, but on others, also biofuels and so on. There are huge problems there on that. I believe that I can give you an example on refrigerator. Yes, a refrigerator in 1970s or 60s, of course, basically has been doing the same. The single refrigerator, but has been consuming a lot of energy. I believe 5 or 7 times more than today. And there's not a price that has driven this change. It has been regulation. Simply regulation and government decisions, just standards that have been working. The same can happen in transport sector, transportation. The standards on cars, simply demanding that the cars are not going to, I don't know, drive 100 kilometers, burning 6 liters of fuels, but only 5 and then 4 and then 3. Yes, and that can change the picture over the long term. So and the states should look the government should look at this issue, I believe, independently from the current outcome on the market of the price. Because over the longer period, the price will be very high and it will be very steep. The price will be very steep on the margin because this is going to happen on the margin. So when we are going to face maybe 2050, maybe 2070, I don't know, the peak of oil, okay? Then actually the world will face a tremendous peak in price, very, 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 very quick, and not coming back. Yes. So because it is on the margin, yes, and once the peak is faced, of course it is not right now yet. So therefore, I believe regarding technologies, the government should push the technologies to be developed, alternatives for oil, alternatives for gas, regardless of what is happening on the prices, with the prices at the moment on the market.
Okay, thanks very much, Raj. I think I'll take a final round of questions. Professor?
Round or just
2 or 3. Do you have more than one?
In that case, let people go. I want to be the last one.
You want to be the last one? Oh dear. What was the question?
Killer. This comes from the University of Manchester. Yes. It's not really about decarbonisation, but energy security and South Stream. So decision made on that in November 2012. So is this a win-win situation? It's going to increase security of demand for Russia and security of supply for the EU, and to certain central regions, member states are involved. Or is it a lose-lose situation, perhaps, that huge Russian investment may be subject to third market legislation, and it does nothing to address this dependency on a single route, a single source of supply, only addresses the route by removing costs from Ukraine, and maybe giving extra leverage over some of these member states in terms of pricing, and jeopardising the route away. So win-win or lose-lose.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Claire?
If I may, I'd like to follow up on my earlier question, and that is about, again, going back to decarbonisation. But I was struck by Andre's comment that nobody outside of the EU takes it seriously. But I would like to come back and say, does the EU itself take it seriously? And for that, it's perhaps is a question related to Matthew, because you mentioned that the Poles, for example, don't consider the security benefits of decarbonisation. So the question is, how do you think this can be further promoted, even within the EU?
Lady over here?
I would like to have a related question to just the question asked, but from a little bit another side. Actually, EU, well, takes it seriously or not, but has some goals 2020, 2030, 2050. But how it will affect Russian position and current situation that Russia trades so much with fossils and Europe actually wants to get out of it. Whether it change what Russia does and if it will change, how and
Understood. Okay.
Oh, you'd like to go after this group. All right. Let's tackle Thomas's win-win or lose-lose South Stream questions, and then Claire's provocative question as to whether the European Union itself takes decarbonisation seriously, and then the lady from Helsinki University about 2020 goals and Russia.
Right. Thank you very much. Very good, actually, question and very good vision of it. Again, development of infrastructure, availability of gas is one thing, and what do we want from that? Security is another thing. Both projects, South Stream and Nabucco, are competing for an empty market. And it's actually becoming extremely dangerous, not in terms of whether gonna be Nabucco or South Stream, but the dangerous thing is that when you have people seriously considering unprofitable project within the market, which is shrinking. And both pipelines are directed to Southern Europe in practice, where due to the crisis, the gas demand will go especially down. It's not already high compared to, just to take statistics, you compare Northern Europe, Northwest Europe, and South Europe, the difference is huge. And therefore, I would say that if I were, I'd actually always stating that Russia and Gazprom should work more on the institutional part. For instance, allowing or creating several relationships with independent producers in Russia who can sell natural gas cheaply or cheaper than the Gazprom. And you know, this autumn there was the first contract made by one of the independent gas producer in Russia and a German company. 10 years long-term contract for gas supply. These things where you are basically better off. You can say in revenge, well, you know, building of Nabucco is somehow an alternative to the existing pipeline system. Well, if you really want to invest into the pipeline system, it would be much less economically costly and much more profitable to renew the current or to expand the current lines, right? And again, institutional predictability in relations with Ukraine, in relations with the Gazprom monopoly, are the key issues, first of all. If they are resolved, you don't need Nabucco. Then the question on decarbonisation, it was not for me, right? So I think that it's not that it's not taken seriously, but let's say that decarbonisation is not considered to be primarily objective in many states, and maybe in the European Union states as well. Other policy objectives lead to the decarbonisation, not vice versa, right? Then the question on Russia in 2020. 2020 objectives increase gas demand, if you look at it. Yeah, why? Because you cannot have renewable energy without having large availabilities of gas. Where the danger lies in is actually in the misfunctioning of the natural gas markets in Europe. If in reality the markets will not have a price predictability, and they will go from high to down, from down to high, what we're going to have? We're going to have suppliers, Russia, for example, who will not be willing to sell this gas anymore. They would prefer to raise the price domestically, which is very bad news for me, for example. But they would raise the price domestically. Other producers, again Nabucco, who will sell the gas if they don't have clear long-term contracts. Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, nobody. Everybody, all the new market entrants want to have predictability. Let's say no predictability, we forget about gas, we focus on renewables, very good. Then we have renewable energy capacities, which the undertakings will not use because of the time variabilities. So they will prefer to switch to the coal. What's going to be the end result? 2020, you can forget. So actually the functioning of the internal gas market in the European Union is in the interest of the 2020 objectives and is in the interest of Russia as well.
Ralph, did you have anything to say with regards to European Union and decarbonisation?
Well, we should ask the European Union, but I'm relatively cautious. You know, there have been a couple of schemes also in the air traffic carbon trading, which have been later on abolished, in fact, after the EU has seen the disadvantages, moving into an area where they can't compete any longer. I can imagine that, but we have to see, in fact, that with all this natural gas, there may be some sort of let's say, a different view now coming up, that saying, well, introducing natural gas here and there will reduce the carbon footprint to some extent. Bringing in technologies with hybridization of petrol cars, improved diesel engines will bring another 30, maybe 40% of fuel efficiencies within the next 10 years, most probably. So we get here and there, we get a couple of good things, and then one might say, well, there could be also other options like biofuels.
Mm-hmm.
Biofuels integrating into the natural gas. The good old biogas, so which is a technology which is proven, which is old, which doesn't need agricultural land, which can use all sort of biomass to convert it and to get further the footprint down. So I feel personally the target of 80 to 95% is quite ambitious, maybe too ambitious. Mm-hmm. And it might be just being published and set to just see how the public reacts, how the market reacts, are there technologies popping up. So, and I believe they will revisit the whole issue in a few years again, and then coming up with different ideas.
Well, regarding the decarbonisation policy, it is a very hard question because Europe is very different from the rest of the world regarding this issue. Andrei has said it, that actually the rest of the world is making that kind of policy, but it's not that decarbonisation is not the target. It's something else. The target, and in China, China are probably trying to enter the kind of ETS system. It's a pilot project. Yes, they are really pushing, and they have it in their national plan, development plan for renewable technologies and decarbonisation. And because this is probably the factor is the dependence on the fossil fuels. They must import them. Smog, which is not very nice in the large cities. The air is not very nice. We want to change it simply, the quality of life. So I don't know whether the decarbonisation as a goal for part of the audience, for part of the society, certainly it is some kind of a driver, but not for the whole society. I believe that the question what can shift the tastes, which is well in the power sector to decarbonize is actually very easy. It's enough to build nuclear power plants, and that's all. Okay. That's all. It's you decarbonize and replace all the rest. Of course, with a little help of renewables, it will be even easier because that's what's important is the merit order curve. And when the renewables are coming in, it already happened in several countries like Germany, like Spain, that in certain part of the years and months, the price of electric energy was negative. Because that's everybody had to sell the energy in order not to stop the thermal plant, yes, because it's expensive. Yes. So they have been paying the consumers to consume the energy actually. So it's quite good for the price. The price should be lower. But what is the basic question mark I believe is in transport, yes, and that's the question whether it's can be policy driven. I already claimed that a little bit yes, so the standards do matter. But a lot of innovation actually are being pushed not from the transport sector as such or car industry sector, but for instance from electronic industry sector. Because what is important is the storage capacity. Mm-hmm. If there's good batteries from the electronic industry driven innovation can really change the market really very much. Actually it's very cheap batteries, light batteries, cheap with large storage capacity, will overturn the market actually. With the oil producers, it would be a disaster. I believe, but Russia not necessarily. Maybe nickel will be important for this, or lithium, whatever. Russia is ripe with resources. Yes, so that's another question. So that's. I think that summing up, the decarbonization policy will be continued somehow in Europe, but not necessarily this 80% goal. This is too ambitious, probably. Yes? This is too ambitious. It could be some, I don't know, the lantern in the darkness somewhere there, but everybody is being lured, like a moth to this. But if it is going to be met, strongly depends on the innovation that are not being driven by this target. But something else.
Thank you very much, Maciej. I think you had a question?
Yes.
Right. We'll make this the final one of the evening.
How much time do I have?
You have 1 minute. Could you introduce yourself,
very
please?
short. Hello, my name is Adnan Amkan and I'm from MENA Chambers like Christian. I'm slightly confused and sad. I'm confused because I thought as a layman I understood some of the basic aspects of energy policy and energy law, but I've lost that assurance after hearing the speakers today. I must go back to my basic books and start reading my energy. I'm sad because the chairperson has said that I should only ask questions rather than make statements, which I was planning to give a lecture. That's why I came here, but now I have to stick to the questions. Now, I have a question for each of the speakers, and I will try to be as clear as possible. And if you don't understand my question, please, it's my language, ask me again, and I will try to kind of explain it or repeat it. Now, with Mr. Vogel, you talked about OPEC, and one of your first slides, you said that OPEC emphasizes the role of oil in sustainable development. That was one of the objectives of OPEC. Now, I wonder, what is OPEC's definition of sustainable development when you look at the nature of oil in the environment and how it can be quite dangerous to various aspects of human life? Therefore, what is OPEC's understanding of sustainable development? Do you have a working definition to decide what's your role that you emphasize oil's role in sustainable development? And that's my first question to you. The second question to you is the International Energy Forum, which was created which has secretariat in Saudi Arabia. Now, you all talked about price up and price down as if we've never ever heard of economics before. I mean, there's the market. I mean, of course you mentioned it. Now, one of the purposes of the establishment of the International Energy Forum was to somehow look at the volatility of the oil prices and make it much more transparent and therefore much more exposed to the market. Now, what is the role of OPEC in this? I mean, of course, OPEC is making some efforts in this, but you have not mentioned the IEF, and I was wondering whether you could enlighten us on that and why this institution was created by the oil-producing countries. Of course, OPEC is a trading bloc. Whoever says to you that OPEC is not a trading bloc, they are fooling themselves. And if you look at the WTO rules and try to look at the functions of OPEC against the WTO principles, of course, the possibility, it's highly arguable that OPEC is a trading bloc. I will stop with Mr. Vogel, then I will come to the others. Or do you want me to carry on?
I think you'd better carry on while you're still standing.
I didn't have any podcast tonight. Mr. Bagorowski, is that good? Now, you had a nice slide about shale gas, but you haven't, and you just kind of went over it, but you have not actually told us what is the relationship regarding shale gas between member states of the European Union and the European community. There is a major policy problems there. in terms of environmental concerns. There are some countries like Poland wanting to do it and carry on and immediately by producing shale gas, whereas you have other countries which are prohibiting some of the methods of for environmental reasons. Now, the other important thing which I also found a little bit confusing, people talked about the Commission. The Commission proposes legislation. It's not only the Commission, you have the member, you have the Parliament, and you have the Council. Those are effective and important institutions of the European Union, and they play enormous and important role. And at the moment, the Parliament is discussing the shale gas directive, which is they are hoping that it will be issued by the end of this month. Therefore, I thought maybe you could explain this to us. And the other question is, you all talked about prices, energy, security, interdependence, but none of you mentioned what's going on at the moment in Doha with the climate change. This is an important element of the international global energy governance, not only at the European Union, but at as a global level. Decarbonisation. Andre, you said that it is only that the European Union is fanatic about it. No, the United Nations as well as a major program of decarbonisation, and they are discussing it. Now, if you think the United Nations is fanatic about decarbonisation, then the whole world is fanatic about decarbonisation. There is another issue. I do not understand Andre's logic. I've been trying very hard. Maybe I'm stupid. What is the logical connection between saying that if you have more renewables, you will need more gas? Yes, if you have hybrid turbines and hybrid, you might, but I never see the logic of it. How could more renewables will require you to have more gas? Therefore, don't take it too seriously, which I found that. Now, you mentioned that you tried to explain the difference between security and the interdependence. And I don't think you are successful there. I'll tell you why. Because you mentioned, well, it's not a question of security. When the Russians, when Gazprom cut off gas on the European Union through Ukraine, that was an issue of security. That was a major political issue of security, which I think should have been taken quite into account. Now, sorry, I'm going on. You just shut me up because if you feel you're bored. The other issue which I also wanted to mention is that the Energy Charter Treaty, Andre mentioned the Energy Charter Treaty, and there is only one mention of energy security, not in the Energy Charter Treaty, but in the European Energy Declaration as an objective. But the Energy Charter Treaty does not mention energy security at all. Therefore, what the Energy Charter does, it says, well, we need to establish a legal framework for investment and trade. That's all it does. And we need to protect investors. Now, Andrew, you mentioned this convention. I was wondering what new things that convention, Russian proposal, can bring into issues of security of energy. Sorry, I think I've gone on too much. I have even more to say, but I will shut up and thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Professor Ramkhan. I think we'll start with Ralph.
Yes, of course, everything can be in detail viewed in the website of OPEC, where everything is explained. We have a long-term strategy, there's a document, there are a couple of statements there. The role of oil to support sustainable development is very critical to understand, because oil is the #1 energy carrier right now. Not only energy, it's all sort of stuff, this thing. And without the oil, I wouldn't be here, because the transport would be so horrific that it just takes me 2 or 3 weeks from Vienna to arriving here. So aircraft, and I came environmentally friendly by train, by the way. So the speed of innovation, the number of inventions versus the availability of energy is a graph everybody should look. And if we go back to the Roman Empire, there was a time they had energy available from their deforestation, and the innovation went up. There was a time when the energy became scarce and the innovation went down. So for OPEC, sustainability means supplying oil to the world, assuring the supply. The second question, the pricing. OPEC is not any longer fixing a price. OPEC is stabilizing. And as I mentioned somewhere at the end, too high is not good, too low is not good. With everything in the life. Think about anything. Too much is not good, not enough is not good. The same is with the oil price. So OPEC has frequent meetings and consultation with the member countries, also with other entities like the EU. And they have certain opinions about prices, which can be also seen by the official statements. What else to say? Of course, OPEC is aware of the challenges in the climate, and OPEC encourages the use of oil in a responsible manner, and also encourages technologies which help to reduce the climate change, like enhanced oil recovery and using carbon dioxide for that, or programs which combat deforestation.
Right. Okay. More shale gas.
Shale gas, yes. Of course, you're perfectly right that the legal issue, this is very complex. It's a directive at the moment being discussed, and there are different political stress about it, and different groups that support different approaches. But I have a strong feeling that especially the proponents of decarbonisation should ask themselves if they want to decarbonize, how? Yes, and that this question is not often answered properly, because that if not the gas solution, then nuclear. It's no other option actually, not other viable option, because the renewables, of course, can support even 20%, even maybe 30% of the mix, but no more. Okay, so this is not doable for the larger chunk. So what with the rest? And the goal is very ambitious: 80%, 95%, and actually 100% in the power sector, generation sector. So that's so that must be an option, and it must be a bridging technology also. And I believe there's a lot of exaggeration regarding the environmental issues with respect to the shale gas. Of course, this is not so easy as in the United States, because there's Dakota or Texas or so on are rather empty. So nobody's living there, and no much vegetation or so on. So that's something else that in Europe, which is quite populated, and with vegetation and with agriculture and so on. However, there are a lot of myths associated with this technology, and sometimes this astonishes me, because that's, the shale gas is criticized for basically the same technology that is being used to extract ordinary oil. Yeah. It's basically the same, of course, it's a modification, but more or less it's basically the same. And regarding the CCS technology is also basically the same. It's simply to inject something under tremendous pressure underground. Okay. But there's a CO2 injection and not some kind of liquid, organic liquid actually, that can be drunk, which is safe, perfectly safe. So that's environmental issues. Okay, if not the shale gas for Europe, which is important, I believe, from the security perspective, then what? The renewables and wind and solar are not enough. I'd say desert tech is too risky from the political perspective. Because okay, you can, in principle, you can import electricity from Africa. And politically, we have seen what is happening at the moment. Nobody knows what is going to happen in the future. So it's quite risky. You can see what German companies are actually are doing. They are withdrawing from this project.
They're withdrawing for lack of money, by the way.
Okay, but I believe the risk is an issue. It's like with nuclear energy. Yes.
The risk issue from bringing gas from Russia.
Okay, but the risk is an issue. It's just like with nuclear energy. And nuclear energy is perfectly safe, actually. Statistics are showing it. It's perfectly safe. However, there's huge political risk.
Fukushima is an example of safety.
Yes, nobody has died. Yes, but when you look on statistics, it is extremely safe. And there are long-term statistics. However, political risk and let's say the pressure from the society on the politicians is so strong that for the investor perspective, it is risky, okay, to invest in this technology, and or from the bank perspective to finance. So the risks do matter, and if we want to treat decarbonisation goal seriously, that we must reduce those risks somewhere, and that's the question where, and I would say shale gas is perfect as a bridging technology. It's not that technology forever. Okay, so but in order to wait and see what is going to happen on the way with other technologies, renewables included.
Andrea, you have a vote?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to be short. So, about decarbonisation. It's taken seriously everywhere. So, decarbonisation is an objective in many countries and is taken it. But how to tackle it and what regime to have at international level is a big debate. That's discussable. When you are referring to the UN, we can also refer to the Conference of Parties, where the European Union's conception is in far to be minority. So that's my point. Coming back to what actually has been discussed now about innovation, yes, it's a risk. It's a risk to go into the new technology, and even nuclear energy needs high capital intensive investments, which are usually buried by the state, like safety, waste management. The budget is a state money which is going there. And here I'm coming to the issue of natural gas, and I will come. This is a minor issue. No, it's not a minor issue, but so, natural gas and renewables. Let's imagine a situation where we move to 100% renewables. Everything is perfect. We don't need gas anymore. We have solar panels, we have the wind turbines and other innovative things. Due to the weather variability, what you're going to do? You say, well, it's easy. I go quickly to the gas spot market and I buy the gas. But look at the gas industry structure. You will not have gas which is just flowing in the air. Well, you may have gas which is flowing in the air, but you cannot catch it and generate electricity from. So you need to have long-term supplies. And due to the variability, you need to have a lot of natural gas. You need to have gas available. Otherwise, you will depend on the spot price, and the spot price, usually when everybody will jump on the spot price, the demand goes up, so the price goes up. And here, the risk is that for the undertaking, let's imagine we are undertakings, what would be easier? To rely on this renewable with a constantly rising the price for natural gas when we try to buy it, or to close this renewable and to start thinking of something else. What would be the alternative? The best alternative is coal. So in this context, 100% objective of renewables only for the sake to have renewables is problematic and not sustainable. Therefore, constructing large capacities of renewables need to be combined with large availability of gas. And then about Energy Charter, of course. Energy Charter doesn't mention security. And it's a correct way to do. Security, that it's a politicization of an issue. And Energy Charter's objective consists in, on the contrary, make things transparent, clear, and create a governance. And I think that the Energy Charter is one of the basically best documents which could emphasize all the aspects of energy trade and investment. The problem of the Energy Charter, and it's not even the problem of the Energy Charter, the problem of the reading the Energy Charter by the European Union, which makes other countries simply getting away with it. And that's the issue which I'm bringing here, right? Regarding the draft convention, I actually was asked advice by Ukrainian government about this convention, and they basically explicitly asked me, should we sign up to the Russia's proposed convention? And my final conclusion was no. The convention doesn't bring anything new. My point again is that producer countries, and Russia is now ahead of them, is proposing a different vision on the energy governance. It's not a sustainable vision, and is not an alternative to the Energy Charter, but it's a clear political signal which the European Union should take into consideration, is to be more flexible on a number of issues in the dialogue with the state capitalist economies, in the dialogue with the United States, and basically in the dialogue with the rest of the world, which is almost absent. The European Union is behaving a little bit like they're still in the 19th century, and everything which is produced norms-wise in Europe gonna be heard elsewhere, but actually no, right? Same would go for many other issues regarding climate change negotiations, or regarding various trade regimes, regarding the diversification and so on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we've had an extremely interesting and robust series of questions and answers, which is exactly what I was hoping for. I'd like to thank the supporters for this event, which I neglected to do at the top of the beginning. So the WWF should be noted here. Ecologic Climate Strategies, obviously the Lifelong Learning Program of the Jean Monnet Fund. I think they'd be interested in some of the views of Europe forward here. I'd like also to thank, I don't know if she's been thanked before, but I'd personally like to thank Claire Dupont, who has orchestrated every single aspect of the entire IES lecture series this autumn, and to whom we should be very personally grateful. I'd like to thank very much our three speakers and also the question askers in the audience, and I'm sure you will join me in thanking them in the traditional way. Thank you.